Hello, I'm Faye Waterman and this is Talking All Things Business. And today my guest is Helen Ronnenbergh, and Helen is a Block Therapy Instructor. Welcome to start with.
Thanks, Faye. I'm happy to be here.
Good. And thank you for your time. But let's share a little bit about who you are and how you got to where you are today. So just share a little bit about you.
So I'm originally South African, as you can hear from my accent. So and I moved to Australia with my family, and I've really had most of my career in IT. And obviously, if you're in IT, you are always bent over with your computer, and 50 years on, that has actually created a lot of issues in the way my body works and things like that. And I have always looked at different ways to try and to fix my body or to make me feel better, like most people would. And it was actually an interesting story, because instead of me looking for a solution to my ailments, I was actually looking for a solution to my cellulite when I found Block Therapy.
Your cellulite?
Because when you get to a certain age as a woman, things start to change and shift, and overnight you just balloon, I guess, and things just don't seem to fit like they used to.
It's called gravity, isn't it? It's
Absolutely.
Kind of gravitational, and the gravity just pulls it down toward the ground, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I had all of a sudden I've always had a little bit, but it kind of got worse when, we went through that phase of life. And I was chatting to a friend and saying, it's just like all of a sudden it's there and I can't get rid of it. And she said, you should try Block Therapy. And I obviously never heard of it before. I then had a look around and didn't really get into it until 18 months later when we went into lockdown. And that was when I really dove into it. I was, like most of us, stuck at home. And I just started doing it, and the results were amazing.
Okay, but I want to take you back a little bit, because you said you're in IT.
I am, yeah.
And what got you into IT in the first place? What was the interest?
Well, it's very interesting, because when in the 80s, IT was a big thing. It was new. We had just got the personal computer that was starting to land in people's homes, and there was a big push to get women into IT, or girls actually going to go and study that. And I really didn't think I was smart enough, to be honest. And lo and behold, I did the tests and things like that. And back then, you didn't necessarily have to go to university to study IT.
Right.
You could become a junior programmer, or what we now call a developer.
A developer?
Yeah. So now we call it a developer, but back then we were just called programmers. So I embarked on that, and then went to university and studied IT. And that was the foray into IT. And it's kind of, once you're in that career, you just don't get out.
Is it sort of being stuck in there?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. That I took a couple of years off because to look after my children and things like that. So, and with IT, the technology just moves so quickly that it takes a long time to catch up again if you've missed a large portion of it. So when I got back into IT, I went into another type of field. I went into business analysis, so not being a developer anymore.
Okay.
And that's very, very rewarding, but more on the business side, and helping people to decide what IT solutions they need.
Okay, so when you say business analysis, what does that mean?
So we look at how the organisation is working, and then we write out their processes, understand what IT solution they really need in order to help them to fulfill it. And then we translate that, because most developers don't have business speak at all, and they're speaking kind of a different language. So I'm kind of like the bridge between.
So you've got both sides, really, the IT and the analyst side of it, going into a business and looking at where they're at what programs they're using, what programs they actually need, and the programs that they're using may not be ones that they need to use. So you actually transition them into an easier and a smoother process so that cost goes down, production goes up, and they're a lot happier in their workplace.
Yes, that is what, the utopia. It doesn't always translate into that because IT is so complex in today's time. So, and it just keeps changing. So it's kind of a career where you're never really doing the same thing for very long. So even though I've been in it for 30 odd years now, it's for a industry that's forever changing.
What did you like about it? What was it that really kept you there for that period of time?
Oh, I think the fact that it's always changing, and because there's such a demand, there's never a problem or an issue to get work. I just do contracts, so that also makes it so I don't work for a specific employer. I do a project, so we put in a system, and then I move on to another. So, and there's always work. So
Always.
it's not an industry where you have to think, it's just not work, so I've got to go and look for something else. And because the technology always changes, it's always something new and different. So that's always.
How long have you been in Australia for?
So we moved here in 2007.
Right.
2007. So the years go by so quickly.
I know they go by very quickly. And you have children?
I do, yes. I've got two, both in their 20s, so they now
Doing their own thing?
Doing their own thing. Wonderful having adult children. So yeah, it's fun. And they've grown up half in South Africa, and we just lived a while in the US, so they spent some time there as well. And then New Zealand and Australia. So Australia's really become our home.
Yeah, but what a great experience for them to be able to see different parts of the world and then decide for themselves eventually where they actually want to live, because they've had those experiences. When you were working in IT and you said that you're slumped over a computer day in, day out, and that takes its toll, and it takes its toll on anyone really. When you're working with a computer, you don't realise how round-shouldered you become, how your posture becomes really bad. And then you get these aches and pains and you wonder where they've come from. You transitioned yourself. You still do a little bit of IT, but there is a passion that you have that has taken you to a totally different place. Talk just a little bit about that.
Yes, it's interesting. Okay, I've always wanted to help people and to work with people in different ways. I think that's the.
So why have you become so passionate? I mean, you still work in IT a little bit, but your passion has changed to something else, and it's because people, when they're working in offices and doing day-to-day work at computers and sitting at desks, develop bad posture, develop aches and pains that they haven't realised, RSIs and all these things. You've discovered something that has helped you greatly, and you've developed a passion with it. What is it and why?
What I really enjoy about block therapy is that it's so easy for people to do.
Okay, but block therapy, what is it?
The reason why we have our bad posture and why it becomes so hard to not have bad posture is because, like you mentioned earlier, like gravity. Goodness, it keeps us down to the ground, and we love it for that. However, because it's always pulling us down to our ground, when we're at our desks and we're standing like this, we have something in our bodies called fascia. Some people know it as connective tissue, and it's a type of connective tissue. But the fascia decides, okay, this is your position, so I'm going to help you in order to make that easy for you to stay. But that's really not where we should be. We should have our shoulders back. And what happens is we then get the buildup of fascia, and it gets really hard and sticky. And the older we get, the harder and sticky. And I'm sure, or maybe you haven't, but sometimes if you cut into a piece of meat and you see that it's all yellow and
Grizzly.
all that what we call sinew. That's actually fascia, and we're in exactly the same way. So the older you get, the grizzlier and the thicker the fascia becomes, which then makes you stay in that position. So it becomes really, really hard. And that's where block therapy comes in, because what we're doing is when we're lying on the tool or sitting in the position on the tool, that actually helps to break down the what we call adhesions, and it's kind of like knots in your fascia, so that blood and oxygen can go in there and the fascia can actually release. There's a beautiful video that actually shows inside fascia and how it kind of like moves and joins together and splits tiny little thin strands of liquid, and they stick together. Now we want them to be nice and straight and smooth. That's right. You know, so if you think about when you're moving, it's not just your muscles. Like we look at the human body in images and things like that, and a lot of it is we see all our muscles and we see our bones, but we don't see how everything's joined together. Like we have a top and a bottom part, you know, and it's this fascia that actually keeps us all together. If we didn't have fascia, we would just be a bunch of bones and a bunch of muscle.
Yes, it's, as you said before, it's that connective tissue that allows us to move smoothly, allows us to sit and be comfortable instead of being in pain, instead of sitting round shouldered and sitting nice upright. I have to adjust my posture now because I do sit at a computer quite a lot.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting as you get older, and I'm very aware of my body and how it works, but you become complacent sometimes, and that complacency will take you out of being aware of your posture when you're sitting, working at the computer, doing the things that you normally do, writing or whatever it may be, and you develop habits that take you into those unknown postures, can I say, or those postures that create neck aches, back aches, shoulder aches, those sorts of things. And with block therapy, that helps release those stresses that we've created on our body.
Absolutely. And you know, if you think about it, what we also do in block therapy is we work with the core. So what would happen if I was holding your arm here and I was pulling up? Eventually your shoulder's going to get really, really sore. So what we normally do is we go for a massage and we work on this area and we get it and it feels wonderful, but we've still got this pull here. So with block therapy, we release the pull, and so when you release the pull, then you can start working on here, and then that actually helps your whole arm. So it's incredible, because sometimes we think we need to work here, but actually when we're working on around our wrist and things like that, that's when we actually release. So we look a lot at the times of what we call the core sites to whatever that pain is. And when we release that, we feel so much better.
And it also releases energy that's been taken away from you when you're in pain, or when you have certain restrictions, you can't move your body the way. With the block therapy, you can ease that and bring back a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more agility into the body.
Yeah, it's incredible how it works, because it's almost like, you know, as we age, we all know doctors say you'll shrink, right? Because
I don't want to shrink. I don't want to shrink.
I have a solution for you. But we all compress and we become shorter and shorter, and our rib cage falls into our body, and that then puts a whole lot of pressure on all our organs, because everything is underneath our rib cage. Mm-hmm. So, you know, with block therapy, we actually lift the rib cage so that we have our shoulders back. We've all got, you know, a lot of people, as you get older, you have that dowager hump, and that's all just fascia that starts to build up, because what it's doing is you're going forward and your body's going, oh my goodness, you're going to fall over. So your fascia starts to build up to try and pull you back. And that's really what's happening when you get that dowager hump, or those rounded shoulders, you know, kind of like comes up and then it goes up and then over.
Those older people that you see, some of them that are actually totally bent over, and they've got this big dowager hump. Can you do anything for those people?
It's very hard to, once you're in that situation, it's a lot of hard work to get back to that.
Yes,
So, the sooner you start, obviously, the better, because you've got to work through so much hard and stiff fascia. But yes, it can definitely be reversed.
Over and long, it doesn't happen overnight.
No,
as they say, nothing happens overnight, but it can happen. But it's a lot of persistence, that time, and that understanding of the benefits of what you're doing for your body, which will help you in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the nice things about block therapy is you don't really need to, it's not like some of those things where you have to be very concerned about the position, or that you can hurt yourself if you get into a wrong position. So you've just got to be able to breathe properly. And that's the second component of block therapy, is using your diaphragm. Most of us are breathing through our chest, which when
shallow breathing,
yes, which then really causes a lot of issues for our lungs as well, and it makes our rib cage very, very hard. So if you feel, and I know with my rib cage, it used to be really, I could feel like it was almost hard on it, and we want our ribs to be nice and soft. So when we're on the block, we actually use diaphragmatic breathing, which means we're coming from our stomach, and we're also breathing in and out through our nose. What happens with your diaphragm when you breathe in? It goes down. It pushes your belly out. So your belly's got to...
I want my belly to be flat.
I know. But when you're breathing, so you can get enough air into your lung, your belly's got to kind of like move out of the way,
yes,
so that your diaphragm can come down. And then when you're breathing out, it goes up into the chest, into your rib cage again. And that up and down movement actually gives your body kind of like a little massage. Your organs are kind of massaged as it's going up and down. Most of us have got very, very weak diaphragms because it's not trained, it's not unconscious. I mean, breathing is one of those great things. You can either do it consciously, or if you don't do it, you're doing it unconsciously. But we will always breathe. But when we become consciously aware of it and we start training our body to do it, then we don't really have to think about it anymore, and we just breathe diaphragmatically, automatically.
I don't do it automatically, I have to think about it.
Yeah, and it takes a while. I think it can be about a year to really get into the fact that I'm always diaphragmatic breathing.
Breathing diaphragmatically is a really important thing. How do we teach people to do it automatically? Particularly if you're sitting and you're stressed, when you're concentrating on something at an office desk, or you're under pressure and you've got to get some work done.
Yeah.
How do you actually teach someone to sit and say, okay, I'm under stress, I need to breathe through this?
We always start block therapy through the exercise of where we actually start. So we start on the belly button, and that is the exercise that you do every time to train your body to start breathing diaphragmatically. And as you go, because what happens a lot of the times is when we do get stressed or whatever, or we get a fright, the first thing you do is you go and you hold your breath.
Absolutely.
And as soon as you're holding your breath, you're stopping blood and oxygen from going through your body. And
that's when you can become lightheaded and pass out.
Yeah, absolutely. So it just comes with training, and eventually you just start doing it, and you realize it's just reminders as well, like when you're stressed. But another very important thing about diaphragmatic breathing is the exhale. They actually call it over breathing. A lot of people over breathe. Now, when we are exhaling, we're bringing all that stuff out of our bodies, right? All it's another way of getting all the toxins and things like that, and negative emotions out of our body.
Yes.
If we're not exhaling fully, we're keeping that stuff in.
Yeah.
So even though you're pulling more oxygen in, you're not exhaling enough time. And it's like, say, if you had a closet full of clothes and you want new stuff, and you just keep stuffing new stuff in, you've got to actually take the old stuff out, so that you can get organisation in it. The other element of diaphragmatic breathing is making sure that we exhale. And it's just through training. Eventually you actually just start breathing like that automatically without having to even think about it.
Yeah, and that would be really nice, because I think there'd be less stress emotional stress in people's bodies and people's minds if they could actually learn to control their breathing all day, every day.
Yeah. And one of the other things with block therapy is that when you're on the tool in that moment, so the great thing with block therapy is that in that moment you're feeling the pain. So now the pain is there regardless of whether you are using the block or not. And that's sometimes a concept that, or I certainly had to, and most people have to get their heads around, is that you're looking for the pain. Now wherever you have an adhesion in your body that is, and you touch that adhesion, you're going to feel that sensation of pain.
Absolutely.
Right.
Feel that sensation of when you have an injury,
Yeah.
it can keep you awake at night.
Yeah. And if you then just sit with that pain and you learn how to breathe through that pain. So you're taking that thing and you're breathing it out.
It's a bit like when you have a baby. If you can control your breath, you can control the pain. So breathing is a really important part of, as I said before, everyday life. But it's more than that, isn't it?
It is, because it's the way that we get the pain out of our body. So we're consciously aware of the pain when it gets too much for us to bear. And really the pain is your cells saying, I'm not getting what I need. I'm not getting the blood and oxygen that I need. And I'm stressed. And then what happens is it still doesn't get the blood and oxygen, so it just starts to cry harder. And then eventually you go, oh my goodness, I've got a pain here. But the pain's been there for a very, very long time.
But you haven't sort of really taken a lot of notice of it because your body's sort of in this, what can I say, mode of being uncomfortable, but you don't know what it is. Unless you've had a specific injury or something like that, and you know
Yeah.
straight away. But pain can develop over a long period of time. The stresses in your body can be developed over a long period of time. So therefore, block therapy doesn't happen instantly. It's consistently working on your body all the time. And it's a maintenance thing. It's like going to the gym. You go to the gym and it's to maintain a healthy and fit body. Using the blocks is the same thing. It's a maintenance thing. You work through all the processes and the procedures of what you do with blocks, and then you maintain so that your body doesn't go back to the place it was when you first started.
Yeah, it can actually go back to before everything started. I have one client who can now bend over. She's looking so much younger. Her face has got a lot thinner. She's losing all this stuff around her chest. She's losing her dowager hump. So all that stuff you can actually do, almost like pulling back time. The nice thing about block therapy is you don't have to go to a gym. You don't have to necessarily set out a specific time of day, because you can intertwine block therapy into your daily life. When you're sitting watching telly, when you're working, you can have a block just sitting there helping to get oxygen to all those little areas in your body.